everyone. Welcome to In the Kitchen with Halifax Public Libraries. My name is Emily Glover, and I'm a registered dietitian and a professional chef. And we're here today in the beautiful Sackville Library kitchen cooking up some delicious turkey chili. So this recipe is really special because instead of using tomato base for our chili, we're actually going to be using pumpkin puree. So it's a little bit different. It's a very cozy, comforting meal for like a chilly autumn day, which is kind of like today, so I'm really excited to dig in later. And also it's extremely healthy and delicious. So I've actually teamed up with Nadine Bernard in these series to demonstrate delicious, healthy, nutritious, and affordable recipes. It's really hard to get all four of those things into one recipe. So we're here today to show you how to make this recipe either in a pot at home or in a slow cooker. And this is a great weeknight meal to serve to your family. And like I said, it's delicious and nutritious, so you got those both great things going for it. All right, so we're gonna get started. The first thing I wanted to do is just to warm up my pot. So I'm gonna get my stove top started here. So you can make this recipe both in a slow cooker or you can do it stove top. And so for both recipes, I would add a little bit of oil to get started. So one way to control the amount of oil that you add to your recipe, because it really does affect the amount of calories in your overall recipe, is to use cooking spray. So cooking spray helps to give you control of where the oil goes in the pan. You don't accidentally dump way more than you need to, and you can add a little bit more if you do need more while you're cooking. So I'm going to just do a nice spray at the bottom of my pot. Just to make it shiny and so you can see a thin film at the bottom of the pot. And then I'm going to start cooking my turkey. So the reason I'm using turkey today is because ground turkey actually has a quarter of the amount of saturated fat as regular ground beef. So it's really heart healthy. Also replacing red meat with white meat has shown to reduce your risk of certain types of cancer. So even though turkey's still delicious and great in recipes similar to beef, it's a lot healthier option for you. So I'm gonna add that right into my pot. And we're gonna be cooking on medium heat today. So let me just put my stove up to medium here. And you're gonna wanna break the turkey up into little pieces and make sure it's fully cooked before we go on to our next step. So my cooking spray that I'm using is actually canola oil based. I would definitely recommend using a vegetable oil if you're cooking on high heat. And the reason is because it's actually a high burning oil, so it won't smoke at a low temperature. If you were to use something like olive oil, it will actually smoke at a lower temperature and you'll taste kind of a bitter flavor in your food. So using a high temperature oil is usually a better way to go. Just gonna let that saute up here. So you must be wondering, what do I do with my olive oil if I can't cook with it? And the thing that I love to do with my olive oil, because it's such a healthy oil to use, is actually use it in salad dressings and in marinades, because it won't have that high heat element, but you'll still have that great taste and the health benefits of your olive oil. So that's what I would recommend there. So while our turkey cooks and gets a little bit more browns, because the brown actually gives it a nice flavor, I'm going to start chopping my flavor adders. So we want to build our flavor of our chili really well, so we have a hearty and, like I said, delicious chili by the end. First we're going to do a chopped onion, a lot of garlic, because I really love garlic, and we're also going to be adding quite a bit of spice. So it's not actually going to be a spicy chili, but it's going to have a ton of flavor in it. So once you get all those flavors in and you start toasting it together, you're going to actually start smelling in your kitchen. It's going to grow and you're going to get hungrier and hungrier as it gets ready. So something I really love doing is actually showing people how I dice an onion. A lot of people struggle with dicing onions. They have big pieces, little chunks, and they're not sure the proper way of doing it. So I'm going to show you how I do it today. And the reason you want uniform pieces of onion is because if you have teeny tiny pieces and big chunks, some will be burned and some pieces will still be crunchy by the end. So if you're cutting it this way, you can make sure that it's always very uniform and cooks evenly. So to build the flavor of our chili, we're going to be adding 1 onion, a lot of garlic. I really love garlic, so I always add a little bit more than a recipe suggests. And also we're using quite a bit of spice. So it's not going to be a spicy chili, but it will have a ton of flavor. A lot of people struggle with actually chopping an onion, having big pieces and small pieces. And the downside to that is you'll have burnt little pieces of onion in your meal and big crunchy pieces by the end. So I'm going to show you the way that I do it to make it uniform every time. So just keep your onion whole, keep skin and all, and take it to your cutting board. What you're going to want to do is take your sharp knife and actually cut it straight from the root to the tip of the onion. Make sure to have your claw shape when you're chopping, just to make sure that you're always guarding your fingertips. So once you have that secured on your cutting board, just cut it all the way through, and then you can peel your onion. It's a lot easier to peel your onion once you cut it in half. So that's my first tip for you. And also always keep your peelings. We're going to use stock in our recipes today, and it's always great to use your own homemade stock. And the way that you can make that at home is actually just using your vegetable peelings and boiling them for a really long time, or leaving them in a slow cooker overnight with some water, and you can actually have some really healthy, delicious stock to put in your recipes at home. So once you have your onion cut in half, you can cut off this little tip, but make sure to keep your root intact. And once you toss that aside, you're going to take your knife and carefully cut horizontally into the onion. 1 or 2 times will do. It really depends on how big the pieces you want them to be. Then take your knife and cut vertically down the onion a few times, depending on how big your onion is. Usually it's about 5 to 7 slices. And turn it around once more to cut some really even pieces of your onion. So this is the way that you can easily chop an onion and make sure that all the pieces are symmetrical. Let's save that little end. So I'm going to do that to our other side. Again, just a couple horizontal slices, followed by a few vertical slices. Turn it to the side and chop into nice uniform pieces. So more practice is better with this. I find when I first started, it took me a few goes to get it really good, but after you do it a few times, you get better and better. Once you get to the end, it might be a little bit harder to slice it the same way, so you can just almost freestyle right at the end near the root. But now I'm going to toss in my onions with my turkey, and they're going to come together and create some delicious flavors going. Next, I'm going to chop up some garlic. Like I said, I love garlic in my recipes. It adds so much flavor. If you don't like garlic, I would recommend you try sauteing it really well and getting the flavors melded into your recipe before saying, I don't want that. Or using garlic powder. It might have a little bit of different flavor that you enjoy. But you can omit this from the recipe if you just are sure that you can't handle the garlic. But I do have some tips for making it a little bit easier to chop, because I know it can be a pain to chop up garlic at home. So to get it out of its skin originally, all you have to do is put it on your cutting board and put a lot of pressure on the heel of your hand on the top of the garlic and twist. And when you do so, whoopsie, when you do so, the garlic will actually come apart. And if you drop a piece on the ground, it's no problem. You can just rinse it off and use it later. So we're going to be doing 5 big pieces of garlic in our chili today. And I actually have a little tip for peeling each individual piece as well. So all you have to do is actually cut off the little end, the root end of each bulb, or each garlic piece, sorry. And then just use the heel of your knife to give a little tap, and the peeling should come right off. So that's a little garlic tip for you as well. I'm going to keep doing this until all of our garlic is peeled. And we're going to chop it really finely. And the reason that we chop our garlic finely is because we want it to be evenly distributed throughout the whole meal. If we have big chunks, it's only going to bring flavor to a few bites, so we want to get it nice and small. There's no harm in buying pre-chopped garlic if you're able to. They have big jars of it at Walmart, pretty affordably. And it does save time in the kitchen, but I find that fresh garlic has a little bit more of a sharp flavor. So if you really love the flavor of fresh garlic, I think it's worth the effort and the time to chop it yourself at home. So once you have your garlic all peeled, all you need to do is run your knife through vertically a few times, turn it around, and bunch it together with your fingertips so it's not going askew. Run through one more time so it has nice little pieces, and keep on the process until all of your garlic is in nice uniform small pieces. If by the end of this process you still have some big chunks left, you can run your knife through again just to make sure that it's fine enough for your recipe. If you're making a recipe with garlic and you want absolutely no chunks, so maybe a guacamole or a salsa, you can actually sprinkle a little bit of salt on top of your garlic and run your knife over it to make a paste. So this takes some patience and some practice, but by the end you'll actually have a nice garlic paste to add to your recipes. And something great about that as well is that the flavor really pops with the extra salt, and the grains of salt kind of break down the garlic while you're making the puree. So they work together to make a beautiful thing. So we have our garlic here all chopped up. I'm going to go ahead and add that to our onions and our turkey. Another great thing about using ground turkey is that you don't need to drain it. So if you're using ground beef, usually you need to go through the process of cooking it fully, draining all the fat, wondering where to put the fat, and then having to put it all back together in the pot. But turkey is so lean that there is no extra fat coming off that you need to drain out. So it just removes one extra step from your cooking, which is always nice. So I'm going to go ahead and stir this up a little bit. At this point, I like to add just a little bit of salt to help build the flavor. We'll add a little bit of salt at the end as well and adjust seasoning if we need to. But I find if you add salt near the beginning, it helps to bring that flavor out right from the start. So we'll stir that all together and keep it going on medium until the turkey is fully cooked. And while that browns up nicely, I'm going to demonstrate how I chop a few common vegetables that we're going to be putting into our chili. So the first vegetable I wanted to show you how I chop is a pepper. So of course we want some peppers in our chili. Not only does it give it a nice flavor, it makes it extra healthy with the vibrant color of the pepper, with that extra fiber and nutrient boost. So I always hate wasting food. It's one of the things that I always try to avoid. So this specific way to cut a pepper, I notice I have hardly any waste by the end, and it helps keep all the seeds attached to the stem, so there's not a big mess on my cutting board at the end. So first I take my knife and just run it from the seam from the bottom to the top on all 3 seams. This pepper has 3 seams. Your pepper at home might have 4 seams, it might have 2, but if you just run it along these seams, then it is really easy to peel the flesh away from the stem, and then all those seeds stay intact at the top. So we're going to do that for all 3 sides. And no seedy mess. So that's my tip for you today on cutting a green pepper. Put that aside, keep that for our stock. So you'll see this white bit on our pepper, and most people will just chop this up and throw it in with their meal. But I always recommend to take this off the pith because it has a bitter flavor. So this might be a reason you get a little bit of bitter flavor when you add that to your dish. So the way that you remove this is to actually just take the tip of your knife. It's very easy to cut off and remove. And also there might be some extra seeds stuck to it. So just make sure that's all taken away on all 3 pieces. All right, and you can even use that in your stock too. Okay, and my final tip for cutting your pepper is that you always want to cut a pepper with the skin side down. So the shiny part should be down on the cutting board. With your claw shape, you just want to do some thin strips. We're doing small chopping today because we want to make sure that every spoonful of chili we take has a little bit of everything on the spoon, which helps to increase the flavor while we're eating it. All right, so we got some strips. We're going to turn them sideways and chop again into bite-sized pieces. And if the piece is kind of big to work with, you can always slice it in 2, just like that. So we're doing some more slicing and then turning it to chop. If you use a rocking motion with your knife and a firm grip on your knife, it makes it a lot easier while you're cutting things like peppers. You can just glide right through the vegetable. And it's another thing that practice makes perfect. If you keep on trying this at home, you'll get better and better at it. So if you're watching this at home for the convenience, and you don't feel like chopping all these vegetables, and you don't feel like doing it on the stove with all these extra steps, this, like I said, it also has the ability to be made into a slow cooker recipe, where you toss everything all at once into the slow cooker, and it will just take 4 to 8 hours. So 4 hours on high or 8 hours on low. And another big time saver is using a vegetable mix, a frozen mix. So there is a misconception that frozen vegetables aren't as healthy as fresh, but usually it's the other way around. And the reason for this is because when the vegetables are picked and then frozen, it's done so quickly that all the nutrients are kind of locked in. But if this pepper, for example, was picked in California and then driven all the way across the country, it kind of loses its nutrients as it goes along and sits around. So don't be scared to use frozen vegetables. And also, of course, they're cheaper and they're already chopped up for you. So it's a big convenience, it's cheaper, and it's just as healthy, if not more. So I'm gonna go ahead and put these peppers aside, and then we'll chop up our celery and carrots. All right, before I finish chopping up all our vegetables, I'm going to add our spices to our onion, turkey, and garlic mix. The reason I'm adding the spices at this point is because I want them to toast and really build that flavor. So if you add spices at the end of the cooking after you've already added your moisture or your liquid, they're going to taste a little bit raw and a little bit bitter. So if you toast your spices, it's really going to bring out that flavor and help it distribute throughout the whole meal. So for this recipe, we're using 2 teaspoons of cumin. I'm just going to add that right in. So cumin isn't necessarily spicy, but it does have a ton of flavor. So we're not going to add too much of that. And we're adding 2 tablespoons of chili powder. So chili powder is the one with a little bit of heat, and it gives chili, obviously, its signature chili flavor. So I'm going to add that in, give it a nice stir together, and then we're going to finish chopping up our veggies. So you can just instantly smell those flavors coming out of the meal. And this is when someone will walk in the front door and be like, "What's for dinner?" because that smells amazing. So just keep that toasting on medium while you finish chopping, and by then you can toss everything together and you'll be good to go. So this recipe actually has something I like to call the holy trinity of vegetables. So that is onions, carrots, and celery. In French, it's actually called a mirepoix, and it's actually used in most of their soups and sauce recipes. So it's definitely something that they use a lot. We love to use that because it has such nice flavors that really come together. And of course, vegetables, the more that you pack into a meal, the healthier your meal is going to be. So this recipe is very healthy because we have so many vegetables going into it. And I'm sure that most of you by now have seen the new Canadian Food Guide plate. So that plate suggests that you always eat half of your meal in vegetables, whether it be breakfast, lunch, or dinner. And that's how you know for sure that you're getting a healthy meal. And so for this meal, we're getting, of course, lots of vegetables, but we're also getting our quarter plate of protein, which is our turkey and our beans. And we're also going to have a grain when we eat our chili because we're going to have a whole wheat roll alongside of it. So that's a full, healthy plate that kind of corresponds with the New Canada's Food Guide. Just going to finish chopping up here. Again, you want to save all of these peelings. I washed these really well before I started because if you peel a dirty carrot, your cutting board's going to be dirty. And when you go to chop, your vegetables are going to have dirt in them. So wash first, peel, save your peelings, and then you can just throw everything together. I'm going to chop my carrots pretty small because, like I said, I want every bite to have a little bit of something in it in the recipe. So for this carrot, it's pretty skinny. I'm just going to cut the root off. And for the skinny part, I'm just going to cut that in half. Again, make sure you keep your claw shape when you're chopping to protect your fingers. Turn it around sideways, and then just with your rocking motion, do a nice small dice. And this end's a little bit bigger, but I think that would be fine just to cut it in half. Again, turn it together and then chop all the way through. All right. And I'll just quickly chop the rest of my carrots here. So the reason carrots are so healthy is because they have tons of vitamin A. And vitamin A is just a nutrient that you want to get a lot of. They usually recommend that you eat at least one orange vegetable a day to get that into your diet. You can see, dropping some stuff here. And I'm going to just finish running through until they're all uniformly chopped. So unfortunately my carrots are not fresh from my garden like Nadine's was using in her recipe. But something I love about carrots is how cheap they are at the grocery store. So you can get a huge bag of carrots for just a few dollars, and they can go a long ways, and they can go in so many different recipes. So I definitely recommend adding more carrots to your diet. If you want to add a little more color to your recipe, you can always try the rainbow carrots as well. They usually have those at marketplaces and at farmers markets, and those are a really great color, add of color to your recipe. They still pretty much taste the same as regular carrots. All right, I'm just going to clean off my cutting board here and start chopping my celery. Celery brings so much flavor out in any recipe, and I usually just like to cut off the very root ends. It's a little harder to chop, and it's great for stock, so I'm going to keep those ends for my veggie stock later on. And to make it a little bit smaller, about the size of the carrot, I'll slice it all the way down the middle. And do the same with this one here. And this is really easy to chop all at once, so it's a little bit of a time saver to do it this way. So once you have that, use your claw shape again, and just run through nice small pieces with your knife. And once you're done, just toss it right into the mix. So if you are using frozen mix, the spaghetti mix I was mentioning before that has peppers, carrots, onions, and celery in it that you can get from pretty much any grocery store, I would recommend putting about 2 cups of frozen veg. But for this, we're doing 3 small carrots and 2 stalks of celery. So we're going to mix that in here with our spices, our turkey, our onion, and our garlic. And we're almost ready to add the rest of the ingredients here. So I'm just going to tidy up a little bit. And we almost forgot our green peppers. I'm going to toss those in too. So I hope you're cooking along with us at home and you're having a lot of fun with this recipe. If you have anything in your fridge that you want to get rid of, pretty much any vegetable will go really well in this chili. I say if you want to be a good cook, you need to experiment in your kitchen. So even if you think, you know, maybe potatoes or corn might not go very well in this recipe, try it out. It might be great. Now that our veggies have had a few minutes just to simmer along with our other ingredients and build that flavor together, I'm just going to toss in the rest of our ingredients, and this chili will simmer for about 30 minutes on medium. I recommend having a cover on top to keep all the moisture and flavor in there while you're cooking. So I'm going to add 2 cups of white beans to our chili here. You can also use navy beans or black beans, whatever you have in your pantry. And I'm going to add our pumpkin puree. So pumpkin puree is actually a really underrated ingredient. Pumpkin has a ton of fiber, lots of nutrients, lots of vitamin A. Like I said, those orange vegetables has vitamin A. And also lots of fiber. Like I said, it makes you feel full longer. So the more fiber you're adding into your diet, the less hungry you're going to feel right after eating a meal. So I'll mix this all together. And then we're going to add our stock. You can add homemade stock if you have it handy. If you don't have stock and you don't want to bother buying it, you can just use water as well. It's still going to have a great taste. So with our beans, I rinsed them really well before putting them in. And the reason you rinse your beans well is because they're packed with sodium. And if you add without rinsing, you're going to have a lot of extra sodium in your meal. So the better you rinse your beans, the healthier your meal is going to be at the end, less sodium in there. Also, it removes the compounds that actually can give you gas. So the more that you rinse your beans, the less likely that's going to be an issue from eating chili. So this is both a heart-healthy chili and also a make-you-feel-good chili. So we're going to add in our stock here. So This is just about 1 liter, so I'm going to add about half of our box of stock. You can definitely measure it if you're a little uncomfortable with doing that, but I can tell it's about half full, so I know that was about 2 cups. And I'm going to mix this all together. Let it simmer for 30 minutes, and then we're going to serve up a bowl and we can eat together. So our chili's been simmering away for about 30 minutes. The veggies are nice and tender. I'm going to give it a taste and see if it needs any extra love. I think it definitely needs some salt and some pepper. So this is the perfect time to add in any extra seasoning you need. But always remember, you can add more salt, but it's really hard to take it away. So add a little bit at a time. And add a pinch of pepper. For you spice lovers, pepper can go a long way as well. Give it a little stir. And now I'm going to taste it one final time. That's pretty good. So I'm going to serve a bowl, eat it for lunch. I hope you had fun cooking along with us today, and I hope your chili turned out as great as ours did. Like I said, it's healthy, nutritious, guilt-free, so enjoy a big bowl with your family. And we hope to see you next time on In the Kitchen with Halifax Public Libraries.